SRIRAM's IS, serving the nation since 1985. Ab offline, hoya online, we are the lifeline.
Hello students, welcome to SRIRAM's IS. This is another class of the current affairs series which we have started for Prelims 2025 for you guys. And I hope you all are fine, and today we are going to dive deep into an important topic. You must know about preamble. Everybody knows about preamble. There is a preamble to the Constitution of India, and we are going to talk about several words inside that preamble. Preamble tells about the nature of the state. India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Some of those words were inserted by 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in 1976. Recently in 2024, those words are challenged, and they were challenged on several grounds. And what Supreme Court has said about all this, it becomes very important for our prelims examination. So let us just see what is the issue and what has happened. So I am Mayank Bharadwaj presenting you this Polity Current Affair series. So this is the judgment, Dr. Balram Singh and others on one hand, and the respondent is the Union of India and another. Okay, this is the issue. This is the news which was covered in Indian Express newspaper. How socialist and secular were inserted in the preamble, and why SC ruled they will stay. So a petition challenging the insertion of words socialist and secular by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in 1976 was challenged, and why this petition was rejected by the Supreme Court, we are going to see this. Coming to the next slide, this is what it is. The Supreme Court in Dr. Balram Singh versus Union of India dismissed petition challenging inclusion of socialist and secular in the preamble. The preamble outlines the guiding principles and core values of the Constitution. So we know, see, the preamble tells about the past, the present, and the future of India. If you see the past, so if you have read the text of the preamble, you would see there that this Constituent Assembly, on the date is written 26th day of November, hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this constitution. So it's a historical thing that on that particular date the constitution was enacted and it was adopted. Now at the same time it tells about the present, how the present status of India, the nature of the state of India. India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. That tells about the present status of India. All those words are very important words. We have already covered that in the concept class series which is going on. What do we understand by the word sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic? So in the original constitution only 3 words were written which were pertaining to the nature of the Indian state: sovereign, democratic, and republic. India is a sovereign country. That simply means India has the ability to take its own decision, internal decision, external decision, without any external force, without the influence of the external power. That is what is sovereignty in a nutshell. Democratic simply means the power lies in the hand of the people. It is the people who are sovereign here. It is the people who elect the democratically elected government. So people are at the basis, at the core of governance and polity in India. That is what is democratic. And republic simply means that the head of the state, the important constitutional posts, the president, the vice president, the prime minister, they're all elected. They're not hereditary. We're not a monarchical democracy. We're a republican democracy. But then later on in 1976, 2 important words were inserted. Actually, there were 3 words which were inserted. Integrity was also inserted, but in this petition only 2 words were challenged: secular and socialist. So there were several grounds. We are going to see what were the grounds, but let us first understand a little bit about the preamble of the Constitution of India. So originally the preamble declared sovereign, democratic republic as the word. There was no word like socialist or secular in the original document of the preamble on 26th day of November 1949 or when it was enforced on 26th day of January 1950. Only these three words were present: sovereign, democratic, republic. Socialist and secular were added later on by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. I hope this much information is clear. This is going to be our next slide, that 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in 1976 during emergency period. Now this is very important because one of the challenges to the inclusion of these words is that these words were included during the emergency period. The emergency, we all know, is included under article, that was proclamation of emergency 352. Also president rule is there under 356, and then financial emergency under 360. These are the three articles. So proclamation of emergency 352 was enforced in 1975 and it continued till 1977 because of several political turmoil in that period, and several changes were brought by the new government in 1978 in the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act in 1978 when this emergency was over. So between this period the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act was passed, okay, which included two important words, socialist and secular, along with a third important word, integrity, unity and integrity of the nation, to promote fraternity, which ensures the unity and integrity of the nation. So earlier it was only to promote fraternity, to ensure unity of the nation, but it has become unity and integrity of the nation after the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. Amendment to the preamble are allowed under Article 368. So any amendment which needs to be done in the preamble of the Indian Constitution can be done under Article 368. It has to be done by special majority. It should not be done by simple majority. This is very important to understand. Now, also people ask this one important question, that Keshwananda Bharati case, which has brought the basic structure doctrine. This case was of 1973. In 1973, this case came up, which has introduced the basic structure doctrine. And according to this basic structure doctrine, the core values of the Constitution, the basic structure of the Constitution cannot be amended. Now, preamble was also considered as the part of the Constitution in Keshwananda Bharati case. How can the Parliament amend the preamble in 1976 by 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act? Now, this is a question many people ask, that why judiciary has not came up and said something. Judiciary must come up and say something, because earlier they propounded that the basic structure must not be amended. But there is a little tweak here. There is something which you have to see. By the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in 1976, the preamble was enriched by adding three words, socialist, secular and integrity. They were added to the preamble in order to enrich the preamble. It was enriching the preamble. Now, what is not allowed according to this basic structure doctrine is to curtail something. Okay, you can always enrich it, but you cannot abridge it. You cannot abridge any provision of the Constitution of India which forms the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. This is very important to understand, and that is the reason why court said nothing when the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act was introduced, and this act introduced socialist, secular and integrity into the preamble of the Indian Constitution. So what does socialist or socialism means? Few people think that it is only a economic philosophy which is very near to communism and far away from capitalism. Okay, but if you see in Indian context, socialism does not only mean economic philosophy, it also means that it is the commitment of the government towards a welfareistic society. Also, the government has a commitment to equally distribute the resources of the country in an equitable manner. Also, there must not be concentration of wealth. Distribution of all the resources, natural resources, economic resources, has to be done in such a way that there is rule of law, every community gets its due share. You know, the downtrodden people in this country, unfortunately, there are many sections which we can today also, after political and social reforms and justice, can be called as downtrodden, because they do not hold that much political say, that much social and economic power. Everybody has to be benefited, and that is what is the welfareistic society is all about. And that is the reason why directive principle of state policy have been introduced in the constitution, that the lawmakers must focus on several concepts which is going to introduce the welfareistic principle in the policy making, in the decision making. So that is very important, and that is the definition of socialism in India. Socialism is not only about an economic philosophy which is very near to communism and a little far away from capitalism. No, not that much. So commitment to social and economic justice, okay, ensuring equitable distribution of wealth. There has to be a welfareistic society. You pay attention to all the section of the society, especially to the people who cannot be brought to the mainstream or who are still downtrodden. It is the duty of the government to bring them economically, socially into the mainstream of the country. And for that reason, why we have inserted this word socialist. That was the basis, that's the meaning. Now, coming to word secular, equal respect and recognition of all religions by the state without favoring any. That simply means Indian state does not have its own religion. It's a secular country. India is neither a Hindu nation, nor a Islamic nation, nor a Sikh nation, nor a Christian nation. Although the state protects all the religion, it safeguards all the religion, it promotes also all the religion, but it does not interfere in religious matter. Although one important tweak is there, state can always interfere in secular matters of the religion, such as marriage, such as inheritance, such as divorce. You know, that is the reason why triple talaq has been thrown away. That is the reason why 1937 Shariat Act has been the provision of triple talaq has been removed or declared unconstitutional. It is a religious matter, but at the same time, marriage, divorce, inheritance, these are secular matters also, although they all work according to the Muslim law and Hindu law and different laws of different religions, but still they are secular matter, and that is the reason the state can interfere. But the core values of a religion, the core values of Islam, the core values of Hinduism, the core values of Sikhism, in all those matters, state has no say, and state maintains a distance from the core values. It does not interfere itself and does not attach itself with the core values of only one religion. And it is reflected everywhere in our society. Also in the constitution, from article 25 to 28, fundamental rights has been given to citizens of the country for propagating, professing their own religion. They can practice, propagate and profess their own religion. Can be done. So secular word is a very important word again, and socialist word is a very important word. So these two were inserted by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. Now what problem came? Why are they challenged? See, this is what the court have said. it's very important to understand the grounds on which these two words were challenged in front of the Supreme Court. So one of the statement which was written, which tells you why these words were challenged, is this: the word secular was deliberately eschewed. That simply means it was deliberately avoided. Deliberately avoided by the Constituent Assembly. Why? Because India was a secular country. It is very much implicit in our society, in the way of life of India, in our constitution, in our polity, in our governance, everywhere you see. Secularism is very much inherent. It's very much implicit. And that is the reason why deliberately it was avoided. The word sovereign, democratic, republic was written, but secular was not added. Okay. Why? Because it is already inherent. It is already implicit in the Indian society. It was deliberately eschewed by the Constituent Assembly, and the word socialist fetters and restricts the economic policy choice vesting in the elected government, which represents the will of the people. That simply means that the word socialism is in a way restricting the democratically elected government to only one economic philosophy. Now these two are the grounds on which socialism and secularism are challenged. There are more grounds, we will see the next slide. So, retrospective falsity. What does this mean? It simply means that in 1949, word sovereignty was used, word democratic was used, word republic was used, but the word secular and socialist were not used. And it has a retrospective effect. That simply means by adding the word socialist and secular in 1976 into the preamble, they have created a retrospective effect, and that is what they are calling it as retrospective falsity, that the Constituent Assembly did not wanted these two words, but still in 1976 they were added. Now additional ground is that in 1976 it was added when emergency was going on, when emergency was in progress in India, and that is the reason these two words are challenged in the Supreme Court. The legitimacy of their inclusion by the 42nd Amendment was questioned, as it was enacted after the normal tenure of Lok Sabha in March 1976. This is another ground. Because of the emergency, the period of the Lok Sabha was extended, can be extended by 1 year at a time, and during that extended period this amendment came into being and those two words were inserted, and that is precisely the reason why this has been called as a retrospective falsity. The Constituent Assembly rejected secular and socialist words earlier in the original constitution. Now what was the meaning and the use of introducing these two words in the Constituent Assembly or in the preamble? Socialism restricts economic freedom. We have already seen this. So Supreme Court has given its decision, and Supreme Court has came to some rationale for the dismissal of this challenge. Now what was this? First thing, there is a delay of 44 years. Now from 1976 till 2024, if you see, there is a delay of 44 years. The court ruled that there was no legitimate justification for such a delayed challenge. Means it must have been done somewhere in 1978 only, no? In 1978, a new government was formed which has overturned many decisions which were taken by the previous government, and especially during the emergency period. Okay, but it has done nothing when it came to the preamble and the addition of the word socialist and secular in it. That simply means they have also given it a legitimacy that it is okay to enrich the preamble of the Indian Constitution by introducing two words, socialist and secular, in it. Okay. So there is a delay of 44 years. Second thing, legislative power. If you see, Parliament has authority under Article 368 to amend the preamble. Means it is the authority of the Parliament and it can amend the preamble as it likes, although it has to adhere to the restrictions made by the basic structure doctrine of the Constitution. Okay, but still the point is very clear that there is no restriction on the power of amendment. You just have to see that basic structure is not violated. Preamble's evolution. Now we have seen the evolution of preamble. Constitution is a living document adaptable to changing times. Over period of time we have adapted the changes made in 1976 and nobody had any issues. Nobody came up with major issues in the addition of secularism and socialism in the preamble. So Supreme Court has said that the preamble and the Constitution are adaptable. They are organically growing document and they accept changes. And the meaning of change, the meaning of the term socialism has been evolving over a period of time. Earlier it may be thought as an economic philosophy, but now if you see, it is the commitment of a state towards welfaristic society, towards equal distribution of the resources, towards economic justice. Okay, so the words has been changing from a long period of time and they are all acceptable in the longer run. Okay, now secularism in the Indian context, if you see, the term was excluded in 1949. In the original document, it was excluded, deliberately excluded due to differing interpretations, but has evolved uniquely in India. If you see, and if you ask anybody in India today, what do they mean by secularism and is secularism important? They all will say in one voice that yes, secularism is important. And it is very good that the word secularism was added. What was implicit was made explicit by addition of this word. Okay, so it's an important thing that over the period of time, the word socialism, the word secularism has been and their meanings has been changing and has been adapting. Okay, the preamble already upheld secular values through its focus on justice, equality, liberty and fraternity. This has already been done. Okay, the addition of secular in 1976 is merely reaffirmed an already existing principle. Good enough. Socialism's flexibility. It does not hinder private sector's growth. This is what court has said. India follows a mixed economy model. Its commitment to be a welfare state. Now the thing is, people think that since socialism is more closer to communism, where everything is owned by the community. So in utopian society that can be possible, but in actual way, if you see in communist regimes, especially in Russia and China, everything, every source and every little bicycle and bike and well are owned by the government, not by the community. Okay, in the original utopian world, communism, where there is no need of government but the community holds everything, that has never came into being. For the first time, a communist government was set up in Russia in 1917 and 1919 during that revolution, and there was no community holding of anything. Community holding simply means holding by the government. The investment was made by the government, property was holded by the government. There was no private property. So initially socialism was also thought about as a sort of a substandard philosophy or a second-hand philosophy of communism, where a little bit of private investment with government permission was allowed. But over the period of time, India has evolved too much, and now we can see the public-private partnership is too huge. The participation of the private sector is huge in India, whether it be education, whether it be health, whether it be any other area. You see, private sector is booming, and there is no economic prosperity without private sector getting involved. Nowadays, Make in India, Digital India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, everything is coming up on the basis of entrepreneurship. Can only be done when you help the private sector to grow. Okay, I hope you understand this. So, socialism has become flexible over a period of time. So, we can say this, that earlier maybe socialism's meaning was the economic philosophy, but today if you see, it is more about welfare state. It is more about involving the private sector and giving everybody the opportunity to grow. It is more about equal distribution of the resources. It is more about mixed economy. So there are so many changes which has happened over a period of time. So the key precedents supporting the verdicts. The earlier how things were, so the 1973, the Keshwananda Bharti case, basic structure doctrine was established. Now, if Supreme Court is rejecting this particular challenge to the inclusion of the word socialism and secularism by the 42nd Amendment Act, on what basis the court can do this? That preamble today, if you see, and whatever be the content of the preamble are the basic structure. Of course, it is the basic structure, and removal of the word socialist and secular would be akin to destroying the basic structure of the constitution, because preamble itself is a basic structure and the content of the preamble itself is a basic structure. That simply means the word socialist and secular are also the basic structure, and hence their removal will amount to disturbance into the basic structure doctrine of the constitution. That is the basis of rejection of this particular challenge which was made in the Supreme Court. Petition, a writ petition was filed, okay, under Article 32. You know, they can directly approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 of the Constitution. So this petition was rejected. SR Bomoi case, secularism is a part of the basic structure. Now, this is a very important case of 1994, which has declared that secularism, explicitly declared secularism is the basic structure doctrine. So over a period of time, its importance has evolved from 1976 to 1994, and from 1994 to 2024 and 25, secularism has become a very important part. And just because it has been introduced during the emergency, or just because the natural period of the Lok Sabha was extended, or just because several people feel that it is a retrospective falsity, we cannot disturb the basic structure doctrine which is so dear to the country now. Okay. Property Owners Association versus the state of Maharashtra, this is a 2024 judgment, says that it clarified that economic policy remains flexible under the preamble. That simply means India does not stick to socialism as an economic policy, but the meaning of socialism has evolved over a period of time. It means, again and again I am repeating, the commitment of a state towards a welfareistic society, equal distribution of resources, economic and social justice. Okay. Implication of the verdict. Now what will happen after this verdict has came up? It reaffirms the constitutional values. The word socialist and secular are deeply embedded in the Indian constitutional ethos. So it is in a way reaffirming the constitutional values. No hindrance to policy. The government retain flexibility in economic and religious policy as long as they do not violate the fundamental rights, or we can say they do not violate the basic structure of the constitution. So this is also reaffirmed in a way. This is the implication of this judgment, that the policies of the government are okay, the economic policies are okay, the religious policies are okay, till the time they are not hurting the fundamental rights of the basic structure of the constitution. Okay. Endorsement of Parliament's amending power. Parliament already had amending power under Article 368, and this judgment in a way has endorsed the Parliament's power to amend the Constitution under Article 368. The verdict upholds Parliament's authority to modify the Constitution while respecting the basic structure doctrine. So this is the case was all about. This is the last slide, and thank you very much for joining me in this important video. This, I think, is one of the most important video which will be the highlight in 1 or 2 question maybe asked in prelims exam and hopefully in the mains exam also, because this was a big judgment where, you know, in a unique way the inclusion of the words socialist and secular were challenged, and I don't get the point why integrity was not challenged, but yeah, those 2 words were challenged, and this petition under Article 32 was rejected by the Supreme Court in its judgment. Thank you very much for joining me. Have a nice day. Jai Hind. We will meet in the next current affairs lecture.
SRIRAM's IAS, serving the nation since 1985. Ab offline, hoya online, we are the lifeline.